Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here at the Lifelong Learning Summer Festival and to present this introductory course on the philosophy of mind that I'm going to be teaching this autumn. The name of the course is Mind, Consciousness, and Personal Identity, and it will happen from the 23 October to the 27th November 2025. Very briefly, I also invite you to check the social media channels for lifelong learning in Southampton. There are many wonderful courses, and people that are teaching them are truly experts. A bit about myself. My name is Arturo Vasquez, as Sally said. I'm a PhD student in philosophy, and my interests mainly are the philosophy of mind and language, the philosophy of artificial intelligence, and Wittgenstein. I've taught courses on mind, some rationality and knowledge and ethics, and something that inspired me very strongly to study philosophy is that the idea that philosophy is sort of like something that stands behind or before theory. So if we understand the structure of the mind from a philosophical perspective, this contributes to clarifying some problems in many areas in which we are interested. So, for example, psychology, science, even art, religion, and artificial intelligence. So without further ado, I will be presenting very briefly the contents of the course that I'm planning to teach, but please feel free to ask any questions at the end in case you're interested. So the course is divided into 6 sessions. The topics of the sessions are the following, very briefly. So the first is the mind-body problem. The second session is going to be about dualism, idealism, and physicalism. The third session is consciousness and qualia. The fourth is on personal identity and the self. And the last 2 sessions are on Wittgenstein. The first one is scientific and conceptual problems, and the last one is the meaning of psychological or mental terminology. So the first session is about the mind-body problem, right? So what is the philosophy of mind? So if we think about it, science has done a lot of progress over the last 2000 years. We know about the structure of matter, about the universe, about a bunch of stuff. But pressing questions in the philosophy of mind have been with us for thousands of years. So what is it that it's very difficult to understand about the mind? Firstly, we have a variety of mental phenomena. We have sensations, emotions, dispositions, abilities, beliefs, desires, etc. And all these phenomena have some features, which are mainly 3. So the first one is that we have direct or immediate knowledge about our own mental states. We don't have to observe our behavior to know that we're thinking, for example. The second is there's a difference between, or an intuitive difference between the mental and the bodily. If we think of the computer that we are seeing in front of us, that mental image seems different than the actual computer or the body or our bodies. The last feature of the mental is aboutness or being about something. So, for example, beliefs are about something. If I believe that it is raining outside, then the belief is about something that is not about the belief itself. And the mind-body problem now. So intuitively, there is a mental or psychological and a bodily or physical sides of a person. So the mind-body problem asks for this relation, right? So on the one hand, our bodies have properties that are explainable and studied by the sciences. We have mass, weight, color, etc., etc., etc. But what about thoughts or desires, etc.? So how should we understand the relationship between my desires and my actions, for example, in the world? Or how does the mental states cause physical states or events? Those are some of the questions that the mind-body problem includes. The second session in the course is going to be about 3 topics. So first, dualism about the mind-body problem is the view that our minds and bodies are fundamentally different. So by Leibniz law, if X and Y are the same, thus they have the same properties. But again, right, the mental image that you have in your minds about the computer that you're seeing right now seems different than the computer. So it might be that mental properties are different than physical properties. This view, of course, has a lot of problems, which are super interesting to discuss. One of them is the interaction problem. So if physical bodies obey laws of physics, what is it that my intention to cause a change in the world interacts with the actual world in front of me? So how does minds and bodies interact? A response to this problem can be understood as idealism. So the view that everything is mental. There is no reality outside our minds, which seems a bit radical, right? So Berkeley thought that we cannot think, for example, of a tree without the mind already existing, which is very interesting. But one problem about this view is that if everything is mental, if everything depends on our minds, then how about objective knowledge, right? So what about science? Is everything an illusion? Is everything created by the mind? So those are some problems. The last view is physicalism. So as it's pretty self-explanatory, so everything is physical. The mind is the brain, or mental states are brain states, etc., which aims to solve the interaction problem of dualism. And well, some of philosophical views draw from physicalism, right? So empiricism might tell us that ideas and knowledge we have in our minds arise from sensory perception. One of the problems of physicalism is that it doesn't seem to explain the qualitative feature of experience, which is the topic for the third session. So in this session, we're going to introduce two concepts: consciousness on the one hand, and qualia, which is a rather technical term in philosophy, on the other. So about consciousness, we have four different meanings of consciousness. First, creature consciousness. We predicate consciousness about whole organisms, of humans, of animals, or even bacteria, right? Sometimes. Then there is the meaning of consciousness as transitive consciousness, right? So being conscious about or of something. So I'm conscious of my body, etc., or I'm conscious about something else. The third meaning of consciousness is state consciousness. So, for example, we can have conscious beliefs, conscious desires, etc. And the last one refers to qualia, which is phenomenal consciousness. About phenomenal consciousness, so think about sensory experience. You know what is it to taste like an acidic lemon. So what is it to taste an acidic lemon is the quality or the qualitative feature of that experience. There is something it is like to have experiences. For example, seeing a color or jumping from the bungee or you name it. Just as a side note, some mental states don't have to exhibit consciousness, for example, some others do. About qualia, so qualia can be, as I said, understood as the property characteristic of experiences. What is it to taste like an acidic lemon, or to have a pain, or to see the color red? It seems that we have qualia insofar as we have undergone a particular experience. And pressing questions arise as well, right? So are qualia something physical in the brain, like inscribed in the brain, or is it something to be able to be described in physical terms, or is something that doesn't belong to, say, the constitution of our bodies? Those are the topics for the third session. The fourth session is about two concepts, so self and free will. About the first one, let me just ask you, right? So what is it that defines you as a person? Is it your body, or your different experiences, or your achievements, for example? A physicalist perspective would say that in Hume, a British philosopher, super famous, is kind of like in these lines. So would say that introspection doesn't present us with a thing called the self, but only with different perceptions. So there might be no self, right? In contrast, from a dualist perspective, someone might think that the self is something different than our physical constitution. So, for example, one could not derive our future actions only from a physical description of our bodies, of our brains, for example. Lastly is free will. So according to physicalism, maybe everything is determined by our physical constitution, and maybe behavior is determined causally. But maybe another view, so this is the dualist perspective, the free will cannot be accounted for in terms of a physical description, because it has to be with something, with a property of our minds, which in turn are not physical entities. The last section of the course is going to be about Wittgenstein, very briefly. And so think about the first session on Wittgenstein is about conceptual problems. On the one hand, we have scientific problems. So, for example, what is the speed of light? And the answer is this like giganormous number here, meters per second. So these type of problems, the scientific type of problems, are solved by observation and experimentation. They point to a certain lack of knowledge that we have about a certain thing, right? So it makes sense to say that before the modern physics, for example, we didn't actually know what was the speed of light. Now we know it. So there is not anymore this lack of knowledge. And these type of problems, the answer to them might depend on the structure of the thing that is being investigated. So light seems something objective out there, and the speed of light then doesn't seem to depend on our mental capacities. Those are some features of scientific problems. What about questions like, what is thinking? On the one hand, we can't observe the thinking of someone else, right? We can observe behavior, we can observe their bodies, their eyes, the movement of their mouths, etc. But the thinking seems to be something that we cannot observe. So how does observing our own thinking would inform us about what is thinking for someone else? So as you see, there seems to be a difference between these scientific problems, such as what is the speed of light or what is gravity or stuff like that, and what is thinking, what is a desire, what is imagination, etc. These other type of problems don't seem to be scientific. So what can we do to answer the question, what is thinking? And for the last session, we're going to introduce the following case to clarify these super difficult type of problems. I'm going to help you. I'm going to ask for your help in thinking about the following. So the last session is about the meaning of mental terms, but we are introducing this session with an example, right? So consider for a second, what is time? What could time be? So it's a very difficult question, right? It's, I don't know, some people would say that we have mental cramps when asked these like super huge questions. I'm quoting a philosopher called Augustine. So he says about time, right? So he says about the question, what is time? If no one asks me, I know what time is. But if someone asks me to explain or to define time, I no longer know. So what is going on here? And I'm quoting Wittgenstein about these type of problems. Something that no one knows when nobody asks one, but no longer knows when one is asked to explain it, is something that has to be called to mind, is something that has to be remembered, say. So obviously, these type of questions are difficult questions because it's difficult to call to mind what is required, right? So think about it. You know how to use the word time in ordinary language, and still you can experience philosophical puzzlement when asked to define it. This seems to run parallel to questions about the meaning of our psychological terms, right? So what is thinking? How is it possible that we know how to use the word thinking in ordinary talk and still experience philosophical puzzlement when asked to define it, right? There seems to be an asymmetry here. It seems that we are puzzled about something already lying in plain view. Namely, I would say, Wittgenstein would say, a lot of people in this tradition would say, what lies in plain view about the meaning of thinking is the use of the concept of thinking in ordinary language. And this connects to this different perspective of philosophy. So philosophy in this sense is an inquiry into meaning, broadly understood, right? So the philosophy of mind is an inquiry into the meaning of mental concepts, of concepts we use in ordinary language. So for example, the questions, what is the mind? What is thinking? What could be a sensation? What is the self? Are internally or closely connected to the meaning of mind, thinking, sensation, and the self, respectively. So hopefully this clarifies a bit more the content of the course that I am willing to teach for lifelong learning. And any questions are more than welcome. Here is my email, and cheers.